So, when you hear Internet of Things, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably a smart speaker or a thermostat, right? But the IoT is so much more than that. It's this massive, almost invisible economic engine that's quietly reshaping our entire world, from the farm to the factory. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain and see how it actually works.
Okay, to get a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, just look at this number. By 2020, analysts were projecting there'd be 50 billion connected devices out there. That's almost 7 devices for every single person on the planet, all talking, all collecting and sharing data. The IoT revolution isn't on its way, it's already here, and it is absolutely immense.
And this connectivity is popping up everywhere. This is way beyond your watch syncing with your phone. Think bigger. We're talking about weaving a digital layer into the very fabric of our physical world. We're creating smart farms that know when to water the crops, intelligent buildings, super efficient energy grids, and even entire smart cities. You see, this isn't just about new gadgets. It's about building entirely new, smarter systems from the ground up. Which brings us to the big question, right? It's one thing to stick a sensor on something and connect it to the internet, but how does that simple act actually generate money? How does it create real economic growth? Well, the answer lies in completely rethinking one of the most fundamental concepts in business. So let's get into it. How does connecting a sensor to the web actually make anyone a dime? The whole secret is in a business concept called the value chain. It's basically the playbook for how anything of value gets created, step by step. Now, a traditional value chain is pretty straightforward. You can think of it as the journey a product takes, from just a raw material all the way to a finished good in your hands. It's like a physical assembly line. Let's break this down. In the classic model, you start with physical inputs, things like raw steel or cocoa beans. From there, it's a straight line. You go through production, processing, packaging, until that final product lands on a store shelf. It's a simple, linear journey that turns physical stuff into a more valuable physical product. And this is where the big shift happens. The Internet of Things comes along and flips this entire model on its head. See, instead of physical inputs, the IoT value chain runs on data inputs, information streaming from sensors, open government data, corporate databases, you name it. And the final product it creates isn't a physical object at all. It's a new, incredibly valuable information product. Now, I know that might sound a little abstract, so let's make it concrete. We're going to walk through a real-world example of how a smart retail store uses this new kind of value chain. Okay, let's use this smart store as our guide. Over on the left, you see all the raw data the store is collecting, things like RFID tags telling it which clothes are being tried on, or customer search histories. That data then flows into the middle, the processing stage, where analytics software finds hidden patterns. But the real magic happens on the right, the output. The store doesn't just get insights to sell more shirts, it actually creates entirely new information products, like a detailed report on the most effective store layouts that it can then sell. Suddenly, the store has transformed from just a seller of goods into a seller of intelligence. All right, so now that we've seen how this works for a single store, let's zoom out, because this very same principle is scaling up to create an entirely new kind of global economy. And this is the blueprint for that new data economy. It's known as the Information-Driven Global Value Chain, or IGVC for short. You can think of it as a whole new ecosystem populated by entirely new types of companies, all built around the creation and flow of data. In this new economy, the inputs feeding the system are constant, and they're coming from everywhere. You've got machines, like sensors and RFID tags, but you also have people. Every time we do an online search, use our phone's GPS, or post on social media, we're essentially acting as subcontractors, constantly feeding tiny amounts of data into this global system. So let's meet the major players in this chain. First up, you have what are called data factories. These are the organizations that create the foundational data sets that everything else gets built on. Think of a government agency that publishes census data, or a company whose entire job is to create incredibly detailed digital maps. They make the raw materials. Next in line are the intermediaries, and they play an absolutely crucial role. These are the companies that take all that raw data and they process it, refine it, manage its flow. They also have to navigate the incredibly complex world of data privacy and cross-border regulations to make sure the data is actually usable and compliant. They're the refineries. And finally, you get to the resellers.
These are the businesses that take those refined data insights and package them into a finished product to sell to a customer. This could be anything from a detailed market analysis report for a hedge fund to a super specific advertising profile for a brand. This is where the value chain is completed, and that's where the profit is realized.
So we've seen how the IoT creates value today, but honestly, this is just the beginning. Let's take a quick look at where all of this is actually heading. So what's the endgame here? Well, it's a world where all this connectivity and intelligence become totally seamless, almost invisible. A world where our environment doesn't just react to us, but actively anticipates our needs and acts on our behalf, maybe even before we know what we want ourselves. And that leaves us with a really critical question to think about. As our physical and digital lives become totally inseparable, and as our own data becomes the raw material for this new economy, who ultimately gets to own and profit from the value that all of us are helping to create? It's something we'll all have to grapple with.